Welcome to SEL in EDU.
where we discuss all things social and emotional in education.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Craig, and we are your hosts on this journey.
All right, SEL and EDU family. It is a new year when we're recording, it's a new year. But when you hear this, it's probably gonna be frigid. You're gonna be deep in your feelings because it's like February or something like that. But it's okay. Hopefully this warms you up like a good cup of cocoa. How you doing, Krista? What's going on in your world?
I am good. I am good. You're right. You mentioned the frigid. I'm not looking forward to frigid. I'm already planning warm weather vacations coming up. But I am in a good spot, ready to tackle this 2024 year. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm anxious. I carry a lot of different feelings right now, but it's all good. Right now, it is a week from my birthday, and this year's theme is Renaissance. I'm inspired by Beyonce. You might have heard about that on the Pride podcast, but we gonna get all into it today, and I'm excited about our guest, a great friend to both of us, an absolute superstar in the world, moving and shaking, and I'm really excited to get on in.
So am I. We've been inviting her for months now, and she's incredibly busy, but good busy. And so we're like, oh, the stars aligned, and we were able to get our schedules and her schedule to match up. And so I am so excited, SEL and EDU family, to introduce you to Allison Rodman, our dear friend Allie. She is an ASCD emerging leader that Craig and I have known for going on 10 years now. She is the founder and chief learning officer of The Learning Loop, an education consulting organization that provides professional learning design, facilitation, and leadership coaching services to districts, schools, nonprofit organizations, and businesses internationally. Like I mentioned, Allie is an ASCD emerging leader and an ASCD faculty member. She is the author of Still Learning, Strengthening Professional and Organizational Capacity. It just dropped last year, just a couple months ago. You can still get your copy hot off the presses. And she also authored Personalized Professional Learning, a job-embedded pathway for elevating teacher voice, and that was from 2019. Her work focuses on adult learners, and she has written for educational leadership on professional learning, effective teams, educator wellness, and has also written for Education Week's Classroom Q&A and Edutopia. Allie brings experience as a teacher, instructional coach, school leader, director of teaching and learning, director of professional learning, and school board member. Hello, our dear friend Allie. How are you doing today?
Hey, Krista and Craig. It is so exciting to have an opportunity to join you. You are absolutely right. This is long overdue. And I am just feeling joyful today. I've got to be honest. It has been super exciting working with folks to put some of the new work from the book into play, but also think about some of the generative opportunities that lie before us in education right now. I know that New Year's always sort of have that promising feel to them, right? But it just seems like we're finally sort of turning the corner and people are having this energy and this joy about the profession that I hope continues to amplify moving forward.
I'm really processing the fact that at this time it's like the 3rd of January. By the time this podcast comes out, like I said, we're in winter. And so my first question, which I'm excited about, comes from chapter 2, which focuses on alignment. So chapter 2 of Still Learning. So if you ain't got a copy, you need to get it. And this is one of those, like, you keep revisiting. When I tell you, just absolute gems across the board. But I'm gonna dig right on in because I feel like this is very resonant for me in regards to alignment. And I'm thinking about my future self as I also think about my past self and past behaviors. You in this wonderful text, you talk about discipline of alignment calls on us to create congruence between our purpose and our practice. And at this time, I would imagine people are like myself, got weight loss goals, we got finance goals, we got all these things. And you're also thinking about, okay, I'm in my role or I'm in my business and I'm trying to do these things. And the alignment element is so critical to you having complete clarity of who you are and where you are in your work, as you also give yourself grace to evolve through this process of alignment. I almost said attunement, but alignment, because attunement is another element. But I'm going to talk about alignment. And so I'm really curious from what you mentioned in your comments a few moments ago about the state of education, and we have a number of folks who are really rethinking whether or not teaching is the profession for them. A number of school leaders who are also asking themselves, can I continue to live in purpose and passion in doing this work? And so I'm really curious about your pulse on the work that you're seeing across the communities you're working with, the nation, the globe. I'm really curious about, well, what are some of your observations around people working in alignment, especially in the teaching profession today?
Craig, you are absolutely correct that people are tired. Educators across the system are burnt out. It doesn't matter what position you're in, support staff member, a teacher, school leader, district leader, board member. This work is tiring, and we continue to add more and more elements to it as we go. But I think what's becoming incredibly promising to me and sort of generates my initial response around joy is that the educators who are staying from a place not just of self-care, but community care. And really thinking through how do we continue to support one another in actionable and sustainable ways. And when we look at that discipline of alignment, so often we ask educators, why do you show up, right? Why do you do the work that you do? And 9 out of 10 times they're going to respond for students, for kids. That's why we do what we do. But unlike other professions, we don't always do the best job of clarifying, as you noted, those goals personally and professionally. So while we certainly get out of bed in the morning for students, unless we have clear goals that we're working toward that are going to help us feel that sense of fulfillment in our profession and in our personal lives, we're going to get more tired and we're going to continue to feel more burnt out. So that practice, the day-to-day things that we do and that fill up our time and our task list have to align to the core purpose that we set for ourselves, whether it's a New Year's resolution, whether it's some type of growth objective that we've established, or we just want to have better relationships with family and friends. The day-to-day actions that we take have got to be aligned to those goals.
I think one of the things that when I read the book that I appreciated so much was that so often we talk about social emotional learning and the 5 castle competencies, and we talk about it, like you said, how are we supporting our students? And you took it from a point of view of what are we doing to support our staff to get them to the point that they can better serve students? And so in your book, you've taken adult learning theory, you've taken experiential activities around skill development and woven them with those castle competencies to get attunement and alignment. And one of the things you just mentioned in the alignment is the goal setting. And I think that, in my perspective, knowing you for as long as I have, you are a master goal setter and really good at making it actionable. And that's something that when I think about is not one of my SEL strengths. So let's say, and I'm telling all of the SEL and EDU family, like if you are worried or like, how do I make this happen? You need to get in contact with Allie because she is your woman to get it done. So let's say we take that one off the table. If you had to think about one of the other SEL competencies or skills that you feel is your superpower and that you really lean into, which one would you say that is? And what did that look like for you when you were writing that part of the book?
So my other, if you will, SEL superpower is the idea of collective efficacy. As you noted, that discipline of alignment is really rooted in self-efficacy, right? How do you set the goals? How do you continue to improve and get better as an individual? But in my work, I've really tried to translate that beyond the individual level to the team and the system level. So thinking about from a collective standpoint, what does this look like to help teams form really strong goals? How do we put in a cadence of accountability where that, thought of being accountable isn't a dirty word, but instead something that's truly supportive? And how do we help teams make the time and the space for commitments to each other, but also their collective growth. So I really look at, that superpower as being able to move beyond the self from an alignment perspective to one of team and organization through collective efficacy.
And I know that other times that I've had the opportunity to hear you speak at conferences and on podcasts, you're talking a lot about reflection being part of that process. Could you speak a little bit more about that? Because so much it seems like we need to go, 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 produce, produce, produce. And you've been instrumental in helping educators, especially, realize that there's just as much value in the pause.
The title of the book, Still Learning, is actually a little bit of a play on words, right? So when we look to educators, we look to them to be these constant learners for our students who continue to keep pushing forward, learning new things, trying new strategies. We're in a constant, perpetual state of movement as educators. And that is, to some degree, part of our professional responsibility. We can't approach learning in the same way that we did 20 years ago. We know so much more about brain development and the way that individuals learn that quite honestly would be irresponsible. So we do have that responsibility to continue learning and pushing our practice in new directions, kind of as Jennifer Abrams would refer to, stretching our learning edges, if you will. But there's also value in stillness and calm. So the other dimension of that, as you noted, Krista, is this component of reflection. We encourage our students to reflect on their work, to think about where they were successful or what their strengths and their growth opportunities are. Yet all too often for our educators, we get stuck in this constant cycle of busyness, and we don't promote stillness and calm with the same degree of importance that we give to it with our students, right? So being able to recognize that reflection is as much or more a part of the professional learning process as that action tool or that peer observation or that team meeting, and really honoring that and giving it the space that it deserves within our learning communities.
Mm. This makes me think about a part of one element that you recommend, or one of the techniques and strategies that I think about is the tuning techniques. And you speak about filtering with fences. And I've been adopting this for a while. And actually, I talk to my husband at times about creating boundaries and being very clear about how do you make sure you don't stack several meetings all at one time and not have buffer for self-care purposes, or to pause, because you talk about pausing fairly often. And what I think about with filtering with fences is something that I guess I've created like a little combo. You get a number one and I want, a little extra sauce on it. And so with filtering fences, for those who are like, okay, Craig, what are you talking about? Being able to really prioritize this is what is important this week. Like this is part of my goal setting. This is some of the strategic work that I'm doing, whether or not I'm a classroom teacher or I'm a leader, and being very clear about that. But also then saying, well, how am I going to structure my time to ensure that people maximize and get the best of you when they can, when they're meeting with you, or you're producing content, and that you're setting aside time to say, okay, I might have a 45-minute meeting, and then I'm going to have 15 minutes that's just my time, whether or not it's meditation or power walk. Or even part that I'm just tapping on, because like I said, I love the combo deal of cultivating capacity, of saying, hey, I got 45 minutes to meet with someone to work on something that's super important. But I also think about that 15 minutes could be used to innovate like a turtle. And I think Vicki Davis and even our good friend Kenny McKee talked about that in compassionate coaching is the book with him and Kathy, right? I think Kathy is this co-author. And I really appreciated that, because we recognize that burnout is real. We want to work in passion. We want to work in purpose. We don't want to give up or give in to the exhaustion of just trying to run this race and do this incredible work. But I think it's very formidable for people to hear from you on, well, what does this really mean to filter with fences or to cultivate your capacity? And how do you make sure that with that self-efficacy that you talk about, that they do it in a way that's honorable to the work, but it's also just as honorable to who they are, where they are at this time in their lives. So how do you build that balance and still keep moving forward?
So, if I'm being transparent, that term fences actually came from August Wilson's work, right? His great play Fences. And one of the things that he outlines is that fences serve two purposes. One is to keep people out, and also is to keep people in. So, in coming up with that phrase, filter with fences, the intention was very much that dual meaning, that as educators, to engage in this work in a sustainable and fulfilling way, we have a need, and we need to make a commitment to keep the right people or things or influences out so that we can stay focused on our work. And that might mean unsubscribing from some email lists, or recognizing that you don't need to act on every promo that comes in, or thinking about what tools are actually serving you well now versus ones that maybe served you well 10 years ago. But then also using those fences to keep people in. So a good friend of mine actually painted a watercolor that's on the wall in my office, and it says, if it's not a joyful yes, it's a no.
Mm.
And I consistently try and remind myself of that, of, am I keeping the joyful things inside those fences? And how am I helping educators to do the same? So I've had an opportunity over the course of the past several months to facilitate a number of workshops on this discipline of alignment specifically. And following one of the engagements, the superintendent came up to me at lunch and he said, "Thank you so much. This was unbelievably powerful." And I said, "Well, can you share with me, like, what was your big takeaway?" And he said, "You were the first person in our profession who has ever given me permission to schedule reflection on my calendar, as if that was a meaningful and worthwhile use of my time." And he's like, "I know it is at my core and in my educational philosophy, but for whatever reason, it's just not valued," right? It's one of those things that gets filtered out instead of filtered in. So being really thoughtful about, are we scheduling meetings with ourself, whether that's for a workout or a meditation or a mindfulness session, or even just reading time? And are we giving it that place of significance in the same way that we might give a meeting with our supervisor or a teammate or someone that, within our family that we care deeply about?
Yeah. Yeah. I built in the schedules that, well, I have taken a pause in my full-time career as like a school leader and educator, and I am a full-time consultant for those who may not have known that transition happened during our season 2. But what I found powerful was I had to shift from having several meetings back to back, and I had to build in things that I knew added joy. So I actually built in a 15-minute walk around my campus or outside, just to breathe and oxygenate my body. I also built in time to say, Craig, go and see kids. Because if I'm spending all my time with adults, do that. Build in time for mindfulness, meditation, and gratitudes. I may not always be good with doing like a reflection journal, but I have a gratitude wall where I literally will write down, these are the things I'm grateful for today. And it helped to fuel just a little bit more energy and a little bit more focus into the work ahead. So I really appreciated those elements that help to complement and affirm some of the practices that I've been engaging in as a leader in the last few years.
Absolutely. We can't just always start doing new things, right? At a certain point, we've got to be comfortable, stop doing, and that's okay. To be able to take that step back and say, is this the most intentional move for me to take at this point?
So that leads me to think I actually have two questions, and they're sort of related, but the first one is this. So when we're talking about pause and reflection, I like during COVID, I actually was sad to not. Okay, so I love my house. I am totally a homebody, and I could live here for days and not leave. But after a while, I realized that I did some of my best thinking when I was in the car, like doing drives, that I would leave myself voice messages about new ideas. I also found that when I'm blow drying my hair in the morning, my mind starts to wander. So my first question is, Allie, where do you do your best reflection? And how do you make that intentional during your day?
Very similar to you, Krista. I have a lot of ideas come to me in the car, right? And in some ways, I wish I had more driving engagements because I come up with some of my really good ideas. And, I either voice record or I keep a quick notebook so I can jot down a phrase or two at a stoplight. Um, but I also, like Craig, have been really trying to make time for those consistent walks. And I'm not talking about, like throw on my sneakers and all my workout gear and do like a full like optimal heart rate situation. It's like no, it's just, put on some things that are probably more slippers than shoes, right? And take like a walk around the backyard or a walk around the neighborhood just to clear my head. I feel like I get so much more inspiration from being outdoors and in the fresh air and engaging in some of that movement. Even if I'm not necessarily busy, right? So I'm moving, but I'm not in that constant cycle of busyness. That has been really healthy for me as a means to generate new ideas and just kind of step back and reflect on what the most thoughtful next step is.
And along those lines, I kind of want to go back a little bit more macro and think about the book again and the 5 Castle competencies and how we're working at priming educators so that we're building that organizational capacity. Are there, not are there, because I know that there are, but in your experience, which of those pieces, of those 5 pieces, would you say that districts and organizations maybe struggle with the most? And what would you recommend for them to gain some ground in helping to build educator capacity?
One of the areas that I see them struggle with the most is that organizational learning. We are still in very much a traditional state of schooling where it's a building with 4 walls and bell schedules and, very, strict blocks and pieces that we try and move around from space to space. And there are some schools and districts that are doing really innovative things around personalization and flexible scheduling and figuring out how are we meeting both students and educators where they are. But to a large degree, we're just not there yet as a profession to be able to say, how do we move beyond this traditional notion of schooling to create spaces that are truly learning ecosystems? I find it somewhat ironic that schools, from not only a student learning perspective, but also an adult learning perspective, aren't looked at by other professions as a model of learning, right? We don't have these businesses or these med schools or other places coming to our school systems to say, show us how adults learn best. That's problematic for me. I very much think that those we should be models of those spaces, and we have a responsibility to look at those different dimensions of organizational learning to become deliberately developmental in a way that not only just models learning for students, but quite honestly, models learning across the board and through professions.
I have to say too, I love that term deliberately developmental. And I think often it might come back to having to have some hard conversations around what is the purpose of schooling and what is holding us back from creating those ecosystems that are more flexible. I'll just kind of leave that there. But I think that's a piece that really needs to be unpacked.
And I've seen this at different levels, right? I've been a school leader, I've been an instructional coach, I've been a board member for almost 3 full terms at this point. So I very much have an understanding through those different lenses how our systems operate. But we can do it better collectively. We can do better on behalf of our educators and our students.
Yeah. As you and Krista were just discussing, I was thinking about well, where as a school leader, as a colleague, as a teacher, if I have a PLC, if I have a like this is our early childhood team, or we're a team of specialists who work in a particular, how would we actually pause and create time where we could focus, refocus, or center this work? And I'm like, even take I really love collective efficacy. I think that there's some opportunities even for individuals to go on a retreat and actually just dig into this, do a pulse check for yourself, and then create some really tangible action steps that can come from this. And so I'm curious for folks who are going to have the opportunity to hear our podcast, and I know that they see you, they're going to see you and have seen you across, the social media ways with all the great work that you're doing. I'm just curious, like, it may feel tough at this point in the year when people hear this podcast and they're like, look, I just don't have another moment because we're about to go into testing season, or we're, you know, depending on, where folks are. If you're in up north, in March and April is generally like testing season, and you'll see schools in the South that are actually getting close to the end. And so, what would be your advice for folks who may need to recenter, pause, refocus, and you really do want to engage in some of these practices, take some of these tools and really dig into them in a meaningful way, and do it in a community, do it in collaboration with folks? What would be your suggestions for teachers and leaders who are trying to figure out, well, how could I adopt and actually employ some of this really great work over the course of the summer, the spring, and going into the new year?
I think it's a three-step process, right? So first you need to step back, then you need to recenter, and then you need to step forward, particularly at this point in the year. So that step back phase is really using that end of year opportunity to, not to say be cliche and keep repeating the same term over and over again, but really to reflect. And too often those end of year reflections for teachers as well as leaders have been rooted in the developmental frameworks that we have, right? So whether that's an observation framework that's, more widely known, or one of the ones that's been locally created, often it's grounded in domains and targets and those different components. And that's important. But I think in that stepping back, there's also another layer of that reflection to understand, how did you grow this year as a learner, and what are your goals and areas of focus for future growth moving forward, right? So that's kind of the other layer of that step back reflection. Then there's an opportunity probably in the summer months to do some recentering, whether that's with our leadership team that may or may not include teacher leaders, to be able to say, where in our team practices and team models can we continue to refine? Because the reality is, educators work best when there's that appropriate nexus between structure and agency, where they feel that they have a voice and some command in the process and are being heard. But because they're so busy and they're so overwhelmed, they also have the structures and the tools to guide those processes. So that recentering time really is a self-assessment and self-evaluation of our organizations and our teams to say, where can we provide more structure, whether that's through action planning tools or protocols or team agenda templates, to be able to support some of these practices that we're looking to incorporate more firmly within our learning community. And then finally, there's that idea of stepping forward. And I mentioned earlier the importance to stop doing at the same time that you start doing. So that element of stepping forward is as much about stripping old practices as it is about layering in new ones. We've all sat in those beginning of the year sessions where it becomes the new flavor of the week, and we're like, what's the new initiative? What's the big like rah moment that we're going to like have piled on for the next month or two, and then no one's going to remember? I would much rather have an administrator come in and say, you know what? These practices served us well 5 or 10 years ago. We're going to stop doing them, and that's okay. And this is the area of focus that we're going to have collectively, because we know, based on data and team feedback and how we see our students and our educators grow, that this is what's going to serve us best in this moment. But that's a tough conversation to have as a leader, right? To be vulnerable and say, hey, 5 years ago, I told you this was the thing, but now I'm going to be honest and say, we know more about learning and we know more about brain research now. And it's okay to be able to say, we're going to stop doing that. Because for our kids today and for our educators today, this is where we are. And this is how we continue to move forward together.
I find that to be very encouraging because, again, like Craig said, it could be a really difficult time of year when people are listening in on this. But we are also seeing that it can be there are things you can do or not do or reflect on in the next couple months. And this book offers these protocols, these activities that, even if it's not done in full faculty, but there are small communities that come together to learn about each other, to share about who they are and how they're showing up and how you can support each other. And I'm also thinking too that this would be a prime time to be getting a hold of you to start working on the summer work so that they can think about, what do we need to strip away? What is not serving us? And what do we need to do so that we can create a plan of action that is not overwhelming, that seems doable, that honors people where they're at and their gifts that they're bringing, like their SEL superpowers. And so as people are listening to this and they're like, you know what, I need to get a hold of this book. I also want to remind people that your first book was on personalized professional learning. So not everybody needs to be doing the same thing. And if you partner that with your second book, I think that you could be setting up organizations to just skyrocket. How can people get a hold of you? And what is the best way to be able to do that? Because they're going to want to start working with you to set up a strong foundation moving forward.
All of my contact information and samples of my work is available on my website, and that's www.thelearningloop.com. I also have a pretty active social media presence at The Learning Loop across a multitude of platforms, and I send out a weekly newsletter. So if some of the things that we're talking about today really resonate with you, or you want to learn more and get some free resources, you can sign up for that newsletter right on my website, www.thelearningloop.com/newsletter, and it'll come right to your inbox.
Thank you. I also know that you often offer free webinars to give people a sense of what you offer for free already and then how far it can go. So I know that I just want to remind people to keep an eye on that website and on your social media for that.
Yep, absolutely. We're doing webinars once a month at this point. We just finished up one today that was focused on a lot of these concepts for teams, right? So how do you move beyond the individual to the team level? So that replay is available on my website, and definitely be on the lookout. Not only will I be hosting these individually, but I'm bringing some really awesome guests on in the months to come.
Craig, am I missing anything? Any last questions we've got? Well, we've got Allie in our space for a bit.
I mean, there are tons of questions. I'm just like, okay, where's the retreat on the wonderful island that we gonna, do? Like chapter one. I'm like, where can we find a nice little island like tropical environment just to do attunement work? Like I could sit and experience such joy in actually taking a pulse on where I'm at and moving forward. So I'm just like, where's that at? Where's the part for that?
And Craig, I think it's really important to remind folks too, when I was working on this book with ASCD, I knew that the learning was going to continue to evolve, right? So it was important to me that it not just be a static printed text, but with every chapter, there is a whole resource page on my website of downloadable and editable tools that as I continue to work with schools and districts and organizations, I've been adding to, so that even beyond the book itself, there are the tools and the action steps necessary to put it into action. It's not just concept, but instead something that you can really move forward within your school community.
I'm excited. So I'm just saying, y'all, stop playing. Don't just get one for you. Get one for your friend. Like this is where you gotta buy two. You can't buy one. You gotta that's self-care for two of y'all or a whole group. Have some wine. Go through it. It's all good, in my opinion. It's just me.
Yeah. Your opinion matters. and you know what? Who better to say than like, hey, we've known Allie for 10 years. This isn't just like hey, we just met last week.
Absolutely.
Gotta listen to us. Trust us, people.
Well, SEL and EDU family, it is a continued honor that we are in the presence of Ali Rodman, Allison Rodman, for those who, y'all ain't got there yet, I don't know. I'm just saying, you'll get there at some point, I'm just saying. This, like, so many things. And I'm just like, I've been personally blessed many times by her. And I think I wish I could just say this in a way like, look, you got to get I'm holding the book in my hand. Like I got pages ready. You just got to grab a book. Anyway, let me focus because Chris is looking at me like, Craig,
No, actually, I just got an idea. I just got an idea.
Go ahead, Chris.
What if everybody who responds to this podcast and says, I need a copy, we do a raffle and we will buy an extra book. Allie, could I send it to you and get you to sign it? And, we'll randomly, we'll give it 2 weeks after the podcast drops. And anybody who tags us all, including Allie on social media, we'll put your name into a hat and then you will get a copy. Then you only need to buy one more for somebody else.
Well, and I'll buy the other. Hey.
There we go.
There you go. So it's not just one. You get two.
Two.
We might pick 2 people and it might be 4. I don't know. We'll see what
And you know what? We'll throw in some still learning swag to go along with it. So we'll put in some stickers and all kinds of fun stuff so that you can get that daily reminder of, hey, I got to pause. That's okay.
This is fabulous. I like this idea. We're a good team.
Yes.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Sounds like an Oprah moment. Okay. All right.
You get a book and you get a book and you get a book.
This is amazing. So SEL and EDU family, we could keep going on and on, but it has been an incredible pleasure having Allison Rodman here, author of Still Learning and More. We are excited. You'll get all of this information in the notes and all of that. We're going to tag all across social media, and the Learning Loop is where you need to be. That's one of the great parties that you can enjoy for yourself and more. But until we come back again, and we're gonna have another incredible guest who will share their insights. We will ask you to hold yourself dear and hold yourself tight, and make sure you stand in the SEL light. We love you. Y'all take care.